Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night with a brand new season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds that I'm very, very excited to talk about with my dear friend Dave. Dave, we were big fans of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, as I recall.
Yeah, that came out swinging so hard that it immediately reminded me that I was like, oh, right, this was something I didn't know I needed, but I did.
Yeah, everyone needs Strange New Worlds in their life. But can season 2 live up to season 1? That's what we're going to find out over the course of this week and the next 9 weeks as we boldly go with Captain Pike and the crew of the Enterprise. So, and people are already chatting away in the audience. They were getting started before we were. So, I think that's a sign that we should go ahead and engage the show. No pun intended. Or as Spock would
Hmm.
say, I'd like the show to start now, very fast. So, I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 245th installment of the Tex Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new. And tonight we're talking about the Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 premiere, The Broken Circle, written by the showrunners themselves, Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman, and directed by Chris Fisher. But before we get into that, just a little bit of quick housekeeping. I got to give a huge thank you and shout out to all of the Tex-Trek Patreon supporters. So thank you so much, Starfleet, Sohel, Kikis Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Oh Grey Trekkie, Quarkspar, Benjinium, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, and our anonymous supporters. If you're watching this live on Friday, we're going to have our Patreon watch party tomorrow, Saturday, June 17th. And we're watching the DS9 Season 3 two-parter, Improbable Cause and Cause and Effect, aka the ones where Odo and Garrick discover a Tal Shiar and Obsidian Order conspiracy to, I guess, go to war with the Dominion early. Like they're like, we're not waiting until Season 6. We're getting this party started now. So, yeah, so
It's a
that's
dope
that's a fun one
two-parter.
to revisit. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I remember Dave when you were watching the show for the first time, it kind of caught you off guard. You weren't expecting something big. It kind of starts off as a
No.
simple. It's like a simple murder investigation, murder attempt. Someone blows up Garrick's tailor's shop, and Odo's on the case, and it turns out to be like this big galacto political affair.
Yeah, I loved that stuff. I loved when Deep Space Nine would surprise me like that, drop a two or three parter my way that had some really cool development in it. And yeah, man, this is like I guess not wanting to completely spoil it, even though, right, it's a zillion years old. This is the one, Fathery, that results in I guess I'd say a very decisive move by the Dominion, right, against their opponents.
Yeah, this might have lit a fire under their ass to, invade the Alpha Quadrant. So, Anabrantane didn't know what he was getting into.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And just a little bit of news. Remind everyone that the big creation convention in Vegas that they do every year is almost upon us in August. Less than 2 months now. I'll be there. So if anyone else is going to be there, I know that some of our Tex Trek crew, Aaron and Rachel, have both suggested they might go. I don't know if they. tease me, please say hi and come talk Star Trek with me. It's funny because I know, like, I was just thinking about this in the shower earlier today. Like, you know, like at conventions and cruises and stuff, like people do like come up and they're like, "Are you Fatheree? Are you the Tex-Trek guy?" And I figure like for every one person who does that, there's got to be, I don't know how many, but at least like a couple who don't say anything to me. And maybe you don't want to talk to me in person, but if you do, please do. I really love that. It's like one of my favorite things that has ever happened to me is when people are like, "Oh yeah, I saw your weird ass content on the internet, and now I'm talking to you in person." And it's like, "Oh yeah, it's a really cool thing."
You're a very gregarious and outgoing person. Yeah, people should have no fear about walking up to you and telling you you're wrong about something.
And I also love attention and don't get enough. So,
That's thoughts that you have in the sonic shower. I got it.
Yeah. Also, today is Picard Day, day of recording. June 16th is what some folks decided today. It needs to be Captain Picard Day. Cool. But in, I guess, celebration of today, they finally released some of the details on the Star Trek Infinite or Infinity, whatever it's called, a strategy game. They need to give us a little bit more because like I'm starting to lose interest. I'm like come on, like spill the beans. But I thought they would do a little bit more. But they showed us like some screenshots of like the gameplay. But it's like a strategy game. So it's like here's like your cursor clicking on star systems and stuff or whatever. But
let me ask this, Father. Was it a? It wasn't a leak. This was like they had formally announced it.
As I said on the show last week, they had planned and announced. They gave us like the teaser last week where they were like, we'll have like more information on Picard Day, but like there really wasn't a ton of information. Just you play as either Cardassians or Klingons or Romulans or Federation, and it's TNG era or TNG inspiration. It's really weird. Like I don't know if like it's actually going to fit in the Star Trek timeline. It might just kind of be like its own thing where those entities exist and you just kind of control their borders or whatever. You know, it's kind of like when you play like those strategy games like Civilization and stuff like that. It's like that's not like real history, but
right. That sounds like Father. You know about the 4X games?
No.
It's like those kind of games. I don't really play them, to be honest, but I think I'm just looking it up real quick to remind myself. It stands for Explore, Expand, Exploit, and Exterminate. That's a pretty hardcore sounding thing for Star Trek, but that is the usual format of them. Is those are your concerns, you know, usually with some level of detail and granularity. But yeah, it's kind of weird that they didn't give us some more info to get rolling with.
Yeah, I plan to play the game unless it's like super expensive. I don't know if it's like, you know, like $70 or something. I'm probably not. I'm gonna pass it up. But if it's within my budget, I'm gonna pick it up. Now that I have a PC, I can actually play it on, and I'll give it a try. Strategy games aren't my thing, so I might not have any. You know, if I play it and have like a shitty time, I think it's going to be because like I'm not a strategy gamer. Not that it's like a poorly made game. So, but we'll see. I hope that it's a good product that not just that I like, but people who, you know, actually are the audience demanding a Star Trek strategy game. It makes sense, you know. We were just talking about oh yeah, Deep Space Nine. There's this big clash of empires, you know, in a story that we're watching with our patrons soon. It's like Star Trek's a great sandbox for that type of gameplay and that type.
And once you start getting a little deeper into different cultures, like for Ferengi and Cardassians and all that stuff, well, then you start getting some more interesting options. Like honestly, I kind of wish that they had done like one of those that wasn't such an overtly powerful like group like Bajorans, but I guess they're not an expansionist people. They're just trying to run their show. So that makes sense.
Yeah, they can't have like a little, you know, you can't play one of those games like playing as New Zealand. You gotta come in there as like
actually,
the UK or.
Now that I say it, though, a separate, distinct civilization-style game of trying to pull Bajor up from its post-war era through differing tactics. Do you end up allying again with the Cardassians? You know, could you form a peace? Do you, who do you ally with? What unusual tactics might you try? How do you keep religious zealots from taking over? What do you foster? What do you not? I think something actually could be done with that. Do I think it's commercial? No, but I kind of like it.
Well, maybe Dave will develop that indie game.
I'll work on it. I don't even play these kind of games.
I don't think we have much other news beyond the game, other than just some Tex-Trek news. We're doing a secondary stream on Thursday nights, that started last night. Basically, the day that new episodes of Star Trek premiere. We want to have a group of people giving their first reactions, so it'll be very different from the show we've been doing for years on Fridays. It's less structured. People can join in and drop out. So hopefully we get like more voices and different voices, and it's just it made my life easier just kind of to keep the Friday show down to 2 people. It's just easier to edit. I'm having to work a lot of overtime from my day job lately, and it's really eaten up a lot of my weekend, which normally is like I work on Tex-Trek stuff on the weekend. So it's been a difficult thing for me to multitask, but also if people don't want to see two straight white dudes talking about Star Trek, we have some more diverse voices on the Thursday shows as well.
Yeah,
'cause I thought that was important.
Hot Take Thursdays.
Hot Take Thursdays is what Dave is calling it. I don't know. Like, I feel like all the good names were taken. The seventh rule calls their big group discussions the free for all. And I was like, that's pretty good. But I guess Ryan T. Husk beat me to it, the bastard. But I should have started a podcast with Sirach Lofton, years ago. But
maybe we should call it Arena.
Arena.
Tex-Trek Arena.
The Gordon's Arena.
Oh, I kind of like it.
Yeah, we need to do something. We come up with a mascot character for the show, but I don't think we should talk about that just yet. But I'll say he has some Gorn thematics going on. You remember this conversation?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. But yeah, something that maybe we'll reveal in the future, something to look forward to. But all that out of the way, we got a pretty packed episode. If people are new to Tex-Trek, we do this live stream every Friday night. You can also listen to this show later on podcast platforms. I don't know if Strange New Worlds Season 2 is bringing you here, but you found the right spot, because we like to do a very, very thorough breakdown of the episode. We're going to run through the whole thing, beat by beat, scene by scene, give our thoughts on it, react to pretty much every angle we can think of on how to approach this thing, and give you our thoughts and opinions on it, as well as share some subspace transmissions at the end of the show where we read responses we've gotten from our audience. So, Dave, I think we should just go ahead and recap the episode. So with our typical synopsis reading, and then I'll kind of expand on that with some additional spoilers, but the synopsis for this episode reads: a distress call from Lieutenant Noonien-Singh compels Spock to disobey orders and take the U.S.S. Enterprise and its crew into disputed space, risking renewed hostilities with the Klingons in a bid to aid their shipmate. So yeah, it's a Stealing the Enterprise episode. One of them Grand Theft Starship stories.
That's I'd like to see a list of all the various times that some version of that's happened too. I have a bad head to do this on quick memory, but I know Data's done it. Spock's done it. That is to say, Spock did it with or didn't he do that in not Amok Time?
The Menagerie.
Menagerie, yes. Anyway, something for the future. Just a thought for the future.
So it just happened recently on Lower Decks. They stole the Cerritos in the season 3 opener to go rescue Captain Freeman, and then turned out they didn't even need to do that, because Starfleet was such a uncorrupt system that her innocence was actually proven and everything was hunky dory. But
I like that. I do like that.
Yeah, that was the subversive humor of Lower Decks. But Strange New Worlds took the action adventure approach to their starship theft story. Dave, let's just, before we break the episode down, we can do our opening statements, give our broad thoughts on it. Do you want to go first, or should I?
I'll tell you what, let me go first.
Okay, knock it out.
All right, Fatheree. So you just said action adventure Trek. When Trek goes action adventure, it sometimes rubs me the wrong way. So even though I got my fan service almost immediately in this episode, I had requested Klingon D7s. I got Klingon D7s, although not quite in the ass-kicking way I asked for. But still, still in all, I got D7s right out of the gate. And so I should be I've been, I think, a little bit happier than I was, and instead it was a little bit more of a mixed bag for me. There were a lot of scenes I really liked, but there were just a few more things that made me go like, oh, I didn't like that. That was kind of cliche, or whatever. And that's actually not unusual for me. I've realized, especially with the newer Treks. I was thinking about it, and I remember it was the third episode of Discovery before I started to really get on board. Prodigy took me maybe longer than that to like get on board. Although I think I was kind of enjoying it. And Picard season 3 episode 1 I like straight up didn't like. So this I like this more than that. And I like seeing the cast again, and I loved Ethan Peck's Spock performance. I was kind of hoping they would follow up on that, and that wasn't just some one-off last season where Spock's emotions have had to come to the surface, and they got a little more into about him having to remove the blocks in this one. But so the things that were bugging me just broadly were kind of those things that were either a little cliche or homaged what I felt was like another movie. So I'm thinking about the drinking contest that felt like it was out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, stealing the Enterprise, to be honest, CPR, like, hey, don't die on me scene, Leon doing the thermal detonator from Return of the Jedi, and like the Morse code thing. Any given one of those, nothing particularly awful about it. It's just that together it seemed I was like, I like when Trek is a little less like this, and I also like my Trek a little more thinky and a little less punchy. That said, I liked Pike's brief scenes. I think I had to watch a second time to get on board Commander Pelia. Pelia? Is that how you say it?
Pelia, yeah.
Pelia. But I think the more I think about it, the more I'm liking her, and I want to talk more about her when we get to the specifics. Sure. I like the Mbenga Chapel close ties, although I felt like they sort of dropped some PTSD on them, kind of a little out of nowhere. And, minor complaints of things like, how we're doing those spinny cameras again with all these ship shots, and even interior ship shots sometimes, which feels a little Kelvinverse or Discovery. But I feel like I have a lot of stuff I liked that I'll talk about, but I do feel it was a bit of a checkered kickoff for me. That was a really mixed metaphor. But that's my take. That's my hot take.
Okay, well, I'll go through my opening statement pretty quick, and then we'll get into the episode breakdown. But for me, the episode started off on a good foot. I was so excited immediately when it opened on Starbase 1. I got to see the Enterprise and the crew again. And then when Spock was like, "Oh, isn't it obvious we're going to steal the Enterprise?" My enthusiasm kind of vaporized. I was like, really? Are we just going to do like a Star Trek 3 thing? And, that's the more people steal the Enterprise, it kind of seems like less, I don't know, just don't like that being like a casual thing that happens all the time. And then, I rolled my eyes at the scene lifted exactly from Raiders of the Lost Ark that introduced Marianne, right? Is that her name?
Yeah.
And then it went from that to like Star Trek 6 conspiracy of, there's bad actors on both sides of the neutral zone. You got Federation people and Klingon people that will work together to reignite hostilities. So, it's like, that's Star Trek 6. We're still in the Enterprise like Star Trek 3. But then the episode turned around for me when it showed that Crossfield class ship, even though, the Discovery is a Crossfield class, and they call this a Crossfield class. It looks different from the Discovery. It was kind of like the same saucer, so it's like, maybe that's what like a normal Crossfield class would look like, and the Disco and the Glenn were like the weird ones with the spore drive. But anyways, like I don't know, I thought that was cool. I liked seeing Spock's dilemma of him having to make like the tough choice of like, well, I'm gonna kill this woman that I'm in love with, that I'm like guilty about being in love with because I'm supposed to be in love with my fiance T'Pring, but I bought into that emotional story. I loved the Chapel stuff. I was just reminded how sexy I find Just Bush as Chapel in Strange New Worlds. The climax was good enough. that whole like Spock firing and beaming them on board. And I actually I bought into like the CPR scene, even though I agree with you, Dave. That is like a bit cliche, but I don't know. I just like the actors sold it enough that I bought into that hook, line, and sinker.
Father,
And so,
you know what that sounds like a little bit?
what?
In Picard, our concerns about, say, Jack, oh, it's another Starfleet captain that's, with a lost son and stuff like that. But then through execution, you ended up kind of pulled in.
Yeah. And so the episode ended pretty strongly with me, and then that final scene though with the admirals worried about the Gorn attack. I did not like that, and I don't want to see war with the Gorn in Strange New Worlds. So I would say this episode altogether is just fine, just a fine episode, but very fun, just fine episode. I had tons of fun with it. I'm happy to be back, and last week Dave and we counted down the top 5 things we want to see this season with our friend Giraffe, and we went over those. And I said like my number one thing was I wanted to see Cybok in season 2, and I still do, but. What I actually want is my number one that I thought about in recent days. Like, this is what I should have said as number one on my list. Is I want a like truly great episode of Strange New Worlds. I think it is a fantastic show. I love season 1, but it hasn't done its Measure of a Man yet. I consider Measure of a Man the first truly great TNG episode, or what Deep Space Nine did with Duet. I think DS9 season 1 is fine television. I know it's not the best Star Trek, but I think it's fine. But they did not do a single great episode until they got to Duet near the end of season 1. And TNG I don't believe did it until they were in season 2 with Measure of a Man. And it's something that as much as I love season 1, I know for some people Equality of Mercy is like. That's like the It's a Wonderful Life of Star Trek. Some people just think, that's going to be like an all-time classic episode, but it honestly, like that episode, like kind of underwhelmed me a little bit last year. I came around to it, but like, yeah, like there were a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in season 1 I like more than Equality of Mercy. So I'm hoping that at some point in season 2 that I get like a truly great episode. But yeah, this is a fine, but really fun return to Strange New Worlds. So I'm excited. I just hope that at some point in the season we see something that really elevates the show, like above what's kind of like. I kind of view this as, okay, that's kind of a typical status quo Strange New Worlds episode. I know it can be this good consistently, but I want to see it do even better. So I'm looking forward to getting to that at some point this season, hopefully.
TOS had some bangers in their first season.
Yeah.
I mean, just a ton of them. And so that is like honestly, I feel like kind of the gold standard as far as a show that's episodic, but also a lot more episodes. So we're in kind of a different vibe, and TOS did not have ongoing character arcs.
But yeah, I mean TOS. I don't even think it's like TOS didn't take it a while to start doing great episodes.
Yeah,
it's
great
crazy. Episodes immediately.
It's crazy.
But yeah, I don't expect anyone else to be able to do that. Yeah, let's just go ahead and go to our episode breakdown. We're going to start off talking about the very beginning, the stuff at Starbase 1, the Enterprise in for maintenance, and our introduction to Commander Palia, who was someone I was looking forward to seeing because they had teased Carol Kane, a lot of the promotional stuff going into the season. But yeah, we also catch up with what's going on with Pike and Una and their the I guess criminal trial court stuff that's going to happen in next week's episode. Pike is like, don't worry, I'm going to go get you a good lawyer. So he just leaves the episode, leaves Spock in command. And it's kind of a bold move. Like, oh, we're going to take our star that, he was so popular on Discovery. We built this whole show around him, and we're going to do a season premiere without him. It's kind of a bold move, but I like that confidence.
I somewhat missed him, but at the same time, yeah, I don't mind them shaking it up a little bit. I did think it was a little weird that even a tough case, that the idea that there's like no lawyers who would take it, I'm like, lawyers like tough cases, or they like high
Yeah.
profile cases. This would be a pretty notable one, and they're like, oh, and it's going to concern a potentially.
I think a certain former president is having a hard time finding lawyers right now.
Yeah, yeah,
So
he's kind of a unique piece of work, though. Like OJ didn't have trouble finding lawyers, but like this is going to involve an ethics case too. That and I understand what they're setting up. Of course, they want this one badass lawyer who seems to be not Samuel Cogley. It's a woman, I think, right?
yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's like his ex-wife or something.
Yeah, it'd be too small a world if it
I
was
know. I
tied
would
to
roll
him.
my eyes if they do that. I
Unless they
wonder.
come up with.
Do you think they'll mention Cogley next week?
I bet they do in some way,
Okay.
shape, or form. Like, what if he's prosecuting it?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I kind of like that.
Yeah, let's make Cogley the bad guy. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
But this is Spock's first time in command, so I kind of thought Galileo 7 was the first time he commanded anything, but they were kind of like wishy-washy with those little details. Like, this is the first time of him commanding a ship. Maybe that's the first time of him commanding an away team or something, but I like that idea of like Spock, not feeling like ready to like take over the ship. He's normally like always like on top of his game, so it's kind of fun when we can see him like a little vulnerable.
And arguably he's not at his. I'm not even going to say best. It's just that he's experiencing a tide of emotion. So it's almost like he's got an illness or something like that, or he's dealing with some, troubling stuff.
Sometimes prequels, I shouldn't say sometimes, a lot of times prequels will tell unnecessary backstories that we don't need. Like, how did Indiana Jones get his whip and his
and the scar on his
and-
face? Yeah. Where
Yeah,
did
stuff like that.
why did Superboy decide to wear blue and red? And yeah,
I don't always like that kind of stuff. A lot of times it feels forced and inorganic. However, seeing that Dr. Mbenga gave Spock his Vulcan lute as a form of therapy, I kind of like this because it's actually relevant to the story they were already telling anyways, and it fits in very nicely. But what did you think of that development?
I liked it. Yeah, no, I like you. It's every once in a while, I can like slightly roll my eyes at something like that. But I thought this was a reasonable thing, and it occurs to me the episode, at least on a sort of a secondary level, or at least was dealing with some sort of people dealing with the fallout of their missions and PTSD type stuff, specifically with Mbenga and Chapel, but also Spock is dealing with fallout from battling the Gorn. And I like that. It begins as a form of therapy. I like them talking about the Vulcans doing it kind of primarily as a practical exercise in mathematics. And I think it'd be cool if later on they show Uhura helping him kind of like branch out, explore some creativity. I think that'd be cool, and I think
give us some Charlie X duets.
That would be great. I'd love to see, in the same way that sometimes conversations with Garrick would give us some interesting insights into Cardassian life, just little small snippets of their books and stuff like that. I would love for us to find out a little bit more about Vulcans and what Vulcan creativity might look like, what some Vulcan songs might be like. What is it? Is it weird? Are there like old Vulcan songs that are like more, hot-blooded and fiery as compared to sort of a more logical post-Surak songs? I think that'd be fun. Any level of exploration of that, I think, would be fun.
The music that he played it sounded familiar to me, and I just like I have not had time to go back and double check. But the two things I wanted to compare it to was in Voyager when Tuvok sings to those children the lullaby that he sang to his Vulcan children, and the other thing I think it could be is when Spock and Kirk were having to entertain Plato's stepchildren. There's that bitter Dreg song that it was actually like written by Nimoy that that Spock sings, but like Nimoy came up with those lyrics. So I was like, maybe it's that melody. I don't know, but I want to check. So maybe I'm onto something. Probably not, because I feel like someone else would have noticed it as well. But I'll look into that before next week and let people know if I was right or wrong. But we find out that Chapel is probably going to leave the Enterprise. She's talking about going to a 2-month fellowship on Vulcan for archaeological medicine. So that
I was trying to
Roger
figure out
Corby. We're getting to Roger Corby.
Okay, duh. That should have been obvious to me, but it wasn't. I was like, what is this subplot for?
she's gonna meet this dude who's like, hey, I want to go like find an underground cave where I can make androids. You want to get engaged?
Right. No, I was thinking, I was like, is this kind of a thing where she's like, oh, I'm going to go do this Vulcan fellowship so I can learn more about Vulcans and get closer to Spock?
No, what it is, I think that we're going to get Amanda. I think because they name drop Amanda Grayson in this episode. Yes. I think that Chapel is going to run into Mom. She's going to run into Amanda.
Yeah, that works. Vulcan. That works. Amanda seems like she's a very insightful person and will immediately figure out what is going on with how she thinks about Chapel thinks about Spock. But if that's also the time she comes across Corby, I don't know. That's interesting. I'm ready for that.
And I guess while they're in for repairs, Ortega's gets scolded for customizing the controls on the Enterprise. And
there was just a little bit of the, I guess if you're going to take Enterprise out of space stock, you want to feel like they're rebelling against people who are a little bit kind of stuffy and hidebound, and so these weren't quite Captain Styles or whatever. It wasn't that bad. Arguably, I actually thought Uhura was almost a little too snappish with the guy who was like, "Hey, I'm here to do my job and check your station," and she's like, "Get the fuck out."
Yeah, well, she just graduated from the academy. She just got assigned to communications. She's like taking it real serious, a bit too serious, I think. But yeah, I agree. I would be like, that guy is going to get off work and he's going to go to the Starbase 1 bar. He's going to be like, you would not believe this chick on the Enterprise. I'm there trying to recalibrate the communication station. And she's like giving me shit because she's like, no, I got to stay here and monitor the hailing frequencies. I don't know what she was doing. I don't know if she was like trying to like buy something off Amazon or like was like checking Pinterest or what, but like she would not leave her station.
But these scenes show that kind of, I think they serve the purpose of Enterprise does it different. Enterprise sometimes more of a family, a little bit more. You get the sense that Pike, he let Ortegas, kind of probably customize the controls.
Like Scotty would show up, he'd be like, "I like the ship. It's exciting."
Yes, the quote I referenced the single most often from the Kelvin movies,
and it's kind of is Pelea's motivation to become
that's what she said,
chief engineer. But
Spock, Scotty said it kind of ironically. Well, like you couldn't tell, is like, oh, does he really mean that, or is he like, haha, that's fun, in a kind of like I'm panicking way? But no, Pelea very clearly that is very precisely why she does it. But anyway, so but Uhura gets a signal.
Yes, so let's get into like the stealing the Enterprise stuff. They do get the distress call from La'an. April is like, no, that's a no-go. He explains the planet that she sent the message from, and the message actually is real simple, real straightforward. Dangerous situation on Kajitar 4. Resources of Enterprise critical. Anti-Federation threat. So it sounds like the Enterprise needs to get there ASAP, and April tells Spock, hell no, you can't go there. That planet is currently under the Klingon time. It's like a timeshare with the Klingons. They get to go there and get dilithium for 30 days, and then we get to go there for 30 days, and we can buy some dilithium, and it has to alternate back and forth. That's how we're maintaining peace right now. I do like that we're getting like ramifications and fallout from that Klingon, because that Klingon war was really bad in Discovery Season 1. Like they almost like kind of like overly exaggerated how dire and devastating it was. So it would be weird if it doesn't come up again.
I appreciated that, although I thought April was a little dismissive, and he might say, hey, let's have Starfleet Intelligence look over what she sent, and, we'll consider it. And it's just
send a covert team. But, I mean, for all we know, he, like, when Spock told him that, I just now came up with this on the spot. I don't mean to cut you off, Dave, but I think I might be onto a cool fan theory. What if, like, when Spock brings this to his attention, he's like, okay, Spock is just a lieutenant. This is above his pay grade. I'm actually going to try to organize, like, a covert stealth task force to, like, send there on a shuttle to infiltrate and see what's going on and see if there's a way to extract her. But I can't just send the Federation flagship to go, because that might start a war. So maybe he was being proactive.
I think the fact that they showed the conversation with him and another admiral at the end, April and another admiral.
That admiral might be Nagura, who is mentioned in the motion picture.
Yeah.
Because it's like a Japanese-sounding name, and they got an Asian actor to play him, so.
Yeah, that's true. but the way it didn't sound like it sounded like those guys
No.
could speak openly, and I think they would have mentioned if they had put something together. I think they just wanted to move the plot along quickly, and they needed him to be a little bit of a bad moral to get Spock, so Spock could be a maverick.
Yeah, yeah. Our heroes would be too OP if the brass was all like, sure, whatever you need. Here, you know what? We'll send a bunch of additional ships to go back you up and support you too. So.
But I wouldn't have minded if April was like, "Okay, this sounds serious. We're going to get an intelligence team on it. We're going to, see if there's any other messages. We're going to start talking about this." Nothing is probably going to happen, though. This is just too much of a dangerous place. I did appreciate that they said it was painstakingly negotiated, so we get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is a God, what's the word? Hot, not a hotbed. But anyway, it is a precarious situation. Um, but I would have kind of liked if April had just made some motions like, "Oh, we're going to look into it. It's just going to take a while."
He's also really distracted because he's like, wow, the Gorn are about to invade. And, Pike even said in his log entry, like, I don't know what's going on, but the brass seem to be, really nervous about something. There's something in the air with them. So there's a little throwaway line at the beginning of the episode that's not answered until the very end.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Glad you mentioned that.
But yeah, Spock has a meeting with the other senior officers, I guess. I didn't know that Lieutenant Mitchell was so important, but she's invited to the meeting, so she gets to sit in on.
Well, it
On
looks
this.
like they're going to maybe amp up her role because she got to be pretty. She was absolutely instrumental in the thefty part.
Yeah, she got a lot of dialogue in here. But yeah, I did kind of roll my eyes at the close up on Spock when he's like, "Isn't it obvious we're gonna steal the Enterprise, whatever?" But it still had like a fun actiony vibe to it, and we got. When it cuts from that to the opening credits, I was like, okay, that's like a little corny, that's a little cheesy, that's a little like action adventure heavy, but not as thoughtful or cerebral as I want my Star Trek. But I was like, oh, well, they did add some new visual shots into the opening, so at least that's cool. The show's always flashy and pretty and fun and vibrant, and that's definitely some of its strengths. So I'm okay with it being like occasionally a little dumb. I just hoping that I was saying that we get some more substance in the episodes to come.
Sometimes I remind myself that the original series, which is hits a lot of stuff I like, even though that's also dated in ways, but hits a lot of stuff I like. It wasn't without action adventure components. They were making sure to have phaser fights and ship battles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I
There's
think
big fist fights in almost every episode. Like if they had like the action choreography that we have now, we'd totally see like some of the stuff like of Mbenga and Chapel in this episode. Like some of that would have been doing. I think they might get a little over the top here, like you said, but
I actually didn't love those fight scenes much at all. But we'll talk about that more when we get there.
Okay. I guess Pelea's decision to aid Spock. What did you think of that first scene with her?
This was one that took me a rewatch to kind of get on board. Sometimes a character comes along and they're like, I don't know, they feel like I can almost feel the writing a little too much at first, and I had to kind of wrap my head around it a little bit, and then I kind of did, and it occurred to me, I'm like, oh, you know what? You know what Trek hasn't really done as forward think it is? There's not really many recurring characters who are older. I was trying to think of any characters.
Not with women. Like there's.
What older male characters have they had?
Like the entire male cast of Star Trek Picard season 3.
Well, say excluding an extreme legacy show like that. Something where there's somebody over 50.
Like Mark Leonard. I guess like a lot of parents. Joseph Sisko.
Mostly supporting characters, not bridge crew, not officers.
Well, she's a recurring character.
Okay, yeah, but anyway, be that as it may, it's not something we see a lot of. Generally, Trek seems to be a young man's game, hopping around the galaxy, or a game for the young. So I like that. I'm interested to hear more about her race, which seems a bit mysterious, and then we're going to find out more about that. And I like that Carol Kane, what she brings to a role is that kind of impishness. She is kind of sly, and that is a fun character dynamic, I think, for Star Trek. It was kind of fun that she immediately saw through their subterfuge, but was also immediately supporting it.
Yeah.
I liked the way she kind of put it to Spock. She's like, "Are you doing this for a good reason?" Like she had really already worked it all out. She even probably had kind of surmised the son of Amanda Grayson is not going to be some frivolous and dangerous person. I don't see it. But she was kind of asking, like, I know the answer to this, but go ahead and tell me. You're doing it for a good reason, aren't you? So I kind of like that. It's a little bit meta in the sense that it was almost like she kind of understood, hey, I understand how the dynamics work on a Star Trek show. And that's what I had to get I think, past a little bit. But then I ended up liking her quite a bit.
Jill47 in our live audience says, I think Pelia is an early introduction of a Starfleet Academy character. She just needs to live another 900 measly years. That's also a thought I've been having this week is like, oh, she's an Academy instructor. She could and she's also, I guess, like a quasi-immortal. She could easily show up in Disco Season 5. We don't know anything about the Lathanites. They're a new thing, so they can do whatever they want with her, and I like that.
Effectively
I love
immortal. That's that one thing that they said is effectively immortal.
And they could have made her an Elurian, but I kind of like that they made her something new, because the show should be strange and new, right? And it's kind of baked into the title.
Didn't she say, though, like she was bored as an instructor?
Yes.
So, like, that's... Although, in Discovery's era, that is a exciting time. You know, when I was kind of trying to imagine how you could make a show like that fun and interesting, one of the things I think would be, because it is such an interesting time for the galaxy, Starfleet would be bringing in a lot of new people, just necessarily because it hadn't existed for that much very strongly in that time. And so that could be, I could see her joining in that era.
Yeah, no, it would be like, oh, I haven't done this in a long time, so it'll be like kind of fun and not boring. So I just love that they made her weird and quirky. I understand, like, for some people it might be like a little too weird. I get that, like, if you're just not vibing with what she's doing. But when we lost Hemmer, as sad and tragic as that was, when they said they were replacing her with Carol Kane, we got like that first picture of her in character. My only, I don't even know what I would say, like, objection. I guess, like, my only initial concern was like, wow, the show is getting so human. It's just going to be a bunch of humans and Spock. So I would have liked her to be more visually interesting, but I guess, like, the whole premise is these people lived on Earth for centuries and centuries, and I think maybe Flint, the immortal from Requiem for Methuselah, like, maybe he was a Lanthanite since he lived on Earth for decades, or for centuries. But I needed her to be something that wouldn't be like as, human or normal. I wanted her to be strange and alien. So very happy that I'm getting that, because I was just expecting her to be a human character until I watched the episode. They kept this under wraps.
I wonder if they might talk at all at some point about that notion of the recurrence of humanoid species and the being seeded or any of that.
They've it's come up in Trek a couple times before, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I don't know if this show has any thoughts on it that they want to get out there. No particular reason to. Like you said, it's a Trek tradition. It's come up. But if they have a story they want to wrap around it, or an aside about it, they could. Her character would be a great way to do it.
The scene of Spock trying to come up with his, I guess, catchphrase, his engage, or let's fly, or go fast, or whatever. I like this for a very, very weird reason, but I like it because Dave, you and I had been kind of complaining about this. Like, it started bothering you before it started bothering me, but, like, yeah, it's kind of dumb for, like, we all thought it was cool when Pike said hit it in the Discovery Season 2 trailer, but, like, you didn't need to, like, give, like, every single captain like, their own version of that.
The notion weird that hundreds of different Starfleet captains across the galaxy are all doing some unique thing or trying to find a unique thing is kind of ridiculous.
I'm workshopping something. Workshopping something.
But Father, you and I have also both realized we've lost this fight.
We have lost it, but I didn't even care when I saw this in the Strange New World Season 2 trailer. I was like, you know what? I'm immune to this. I just have accepted defeat. But I've seen so many people reacting online, like, now they caught up to where we were. They're like, oh my god, why do you keep doing this, new Star Trek? Why are you giving everyone a catchphrase? I'm tired of it. So I guess everyone else is turning their backs on it now, too. Like, the fun is worn off.
On one level, if Spock had not been in emotional state, I think it would have been kind of cool if he's like, "That is not a tradition in which I will engage." I kind of wish he would have said something
Well, you
very
can't say
Vulcan like that.
engage because then they'd be
No,
like,
no, no,
"Oh,
no.
engage."
I'm saying him saying no. I won't even do it at all. Um, and then his like he would just say something like proceed or something like that as his thing. But this was an emotional Spock. He was, we know he's in that place. So yeah, he's following hunches. He's playing along with things a little bit more at this moment. It
Well, he
made
doesn't. He doesn't
sense.
play along with it. He just says, "I would like the ship to go now."
Oh, really? I read that as him playing along with it. He kind of looked like he was
Oh, I
into
took that
it.
as like he was like annoyed and was like, "No, just I would like the ship to go now." Is how I read
Um,
it.
okay. Yeah. I mean, that's possible. That makes some sense. I don't know. I honestly don't know for sure now that I think about it. I thought that was the best he could do to it. He can't come up with like a one or two word thing. He just kind of strained it a little bit.
It is,
But I thought he was trying to.
it is interesting that the first time Spock was ever in command of a starship, he disobeys orders and steals it. But
The very un-Vulcan Vulcan.
yeah,
Um, but again, we are seeing him. This could be almost one of those things where it's like, oh, looking back on it, Spock might say, "Oh, this was not my first command because that was in the time when I had was off my meds and my emotions were running high." And so I really don't even consider myself to have been me. It's pretty easy to say that. Now, does it work for an episode? I think so. But you could probably use that as a way of getting
I
around
mean,
that
I'm
if you wanted
fine
to.
with that. His first day in command of a starship, steals. I'm fine with that being. Either like I'm kind of annoyed with how just casually stealing the Enterprise, but it's not something I think needs to be like retconned or anything. But I think it's funny. I love that we're exploring the young experimental Spock, where he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should experiment with my human side. And because he kind of doesn't have a choice, they explain, he lowered those cognitive blocks, and now like he's kind of stuck feeling more human. So
Hmm.
he's just gonna have to accept like, yeah, for this season of Strange New Worlds, I'm just gonna have to be like a little less Vulcan than normal, and
A little bit more the Spock who smiled at the flowers in the cage.
yeah, and so I think that's going to lead to some interesting territory, and it allows Ethan Peck to play Spock differently than Nimoy, which I think is good when they can approach the character from different angles.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's when they brought it up in that episode last season. I wasn't sure if they were going to do anything with it because they didn't in the subsequent episode. Really, that was I think wasn't it right
Yeah,
before
they
the
teased
Quality
it.
of Mercy?
It's at the end of episode 9 when he like punches the panel in the corridor, and Chapel
Right.
is there, and after Himmer's sad and tragic death. But I do feel sorry for Spock for having to be in command because yeah, that's probably not something because you got to think like he's probably like the fourth in command on the ship, but because you have Una would be
Mm.
first officer, and then behind her, I think they always had Lon, and then Hemmer as engineer would probably be next after her. So yeah, it shouldn't have come to him, but unless you went through all of them, and they Una got arrested,
Oh.
Lon is off on PTO, and
Like Gandalf
Hemmer died.
says, so do all everyone who lives to see such times feels that way. Um, but do what he must, and Spock gets pretty decisive. He gets it rolling. I liked him kind of awkwardly challenging Pelia about it. He's like, well, I am concerned that you are not more concerned, or whatever. Was kind of funny. Spock trying to lie, and I actually liked that she caught him on the lie because he was stammering over it. And we've heard Vulcans don't lie, but we very often have seen them lie or exaggerate or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, okay, go ahead and show us that it doesn't always work out well. That sometimes they really do it so awkwardly that they basically can't lie. And they did it. So yay, Star Trek. Good job.
Well, let's talk about Kajatar 4 and Lon's investigation there of what's going on with the Klingons and the Broken Circle. But yeah, I was immediately excited and happy to see some what I would call proper looking Klingons or traditional looking
Mm.
Klingons, but they just immediately feel so much more Klingon. And I think it's a combination of a few things, but they were also written really well. Like the dialogue, it was like felt very Klingon-y. It was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this was written by people who've watched a lot of Star Trek and understand how Klingons think and talk. But I think just also like the makeup just being uh, closer to like the traditional Burman style. It has so many benefits. Just the big one is I know that there's some people who really liked the look of the Klingons in season one, but I don't think I'm surprising anyone by saying you're an extreme minority. Most people who have opinions on Star Trek Discovery Klingons, it's very negative, and I enjoy a lot of Discovery seasons 1 and 2, but I don't like how the Klingons looked.
Yeah.
So not only I think it's a more popular look, it's something that a lot of people are going to be happy with. It's iconic. It's recognizable to people who've casually watched Star Trek. Are going to be like, oh look, those bumpy headed Klingon dudes are back. However, it's also cheaper and quicker to apply, so you can get like a lot more actors in the background and stuff. Actors are able to express more, they can emote more. I think you get much better performances out of the people, and I don't know, it's just it just seems like a win-win-win across the board. It just works. There's a reason why
Yeah.
it stuck around for so long.
It was nice to see Klingons that vibed the way Klingons vibe in most of the best Klingon episodes.
Even if I did roll my eyes at the very obvious scene lifted straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, streaming now on Paramount Plus with Showtime. They should just have like a little icon pop up that said that. Like, when you're done with this episode, go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
But yeah, the honestly, just seeing like his hair. I was just noticing in the still you had pulled up, Fatheree, his hair looked cool. Classic Klingon, or TNG.
He's got like
or
cornrows going on.
Yeah, looks cool.
It's new. It's different. We hadn't seen it before.
right, but still like recognizably within the tradition that goes back to the motion picture.
But Lon explains to the rest of the crew pretty quick when they arrive. So this planet is in control of a group of people that are trying to start a new war so that they can raise the price of dilithium and get rich. And I liked Mbenga's reaction. They didn't tell us anything in season 1 about who was in the Klingon War and who wasn't. So I don't think they had it figured out in season 1. The writers didn't have it figured out. But here right off the bat, they're letting us know that Ortega's, Chapel, and Mbenga all seem to have fought in the war, and Mbenga especially seems to really have some PTSD. Or
The Enterprise had to kind of sit out the war,
right?
But were they all people who transferred to the Enterprise in the first episode of Strange New Worlds?
Mbenga and Chapel, I think, are both implied to be new to the ship, but Ortega's seems like she'd been there like at least a few months. Or maybe Pike just knew her from something else.
It's not that I'm too worried about the timeline. I was just wondering if it kind of worked out that way, that basically the new people were all people who could have been off at the war. Everybody else was on the Enterprise for a while and weren't in the war.
There's also a year gap between Disco Season 2 and Strange New Worlds Season 1, so a lot of personnel changes could happen then. But yeah, there's nothing that contradicted anything.
But yeah, Mbenga mentions the toll, 100 million dead, or at least something in that thereabouts. And
it's just for a couple of parsecs of space. I love that framing of just like how futile and terrible and stupid it is to wage war.
I think the actor did a good job of conveying a sort of world weariness to them. It's one of these things where it's like, okay, that's something that's been kind of dropped on he and Chapel in this season, but I do think that their actors are capable of handling it. It's just that right now I'm in that stage where my mind is kind of having to wrap itself around a late era character backstory edition. So yeah, that's why I was like, okay, yeah, he's got PTSD. Sure, he can act it, but it was a little out of nowhere.
Yeah, but it's also, only the 11th episode we've ever seen with this version of Mbenga, so...
True.
You know, if TNG era, you know, if we were watching this, it's like, oh, we learned this not even halfway through season 1 about Mbenga. I didn't know we were gonna get Oriana, the little girl from All Those Who Wonder for the Gorn episode, but she's back. Played by the young child actor Emma Ho, I believe is her name. Her dad actually watched one of our streams last year and was like, "Hey, that's my kid." So if you're watching this, Mr. Ho, hi. Hope you and the kids are doing good. Because her brother was in Strange New Worlds also. He got plugged into the torture machine. So.
God. You know what, Fatheree, as I was rewatching the episode, it occurred to me, and, you know, it's not something that necessarily needs to be called out all the time because they've gotten good at it, but the casual integration of queer characters in Strange New Worlds, I think, has been pretty
parents,
good.
She had 2 moms. She just like talk about like her parents, I guess. In season 1, she just said like my parents, and like here, yeah. I wasn't
you know what
expecting
else?
2 moms, but yeah, that was what.
I think Chief J seems non-binary, perhaps.
Yes, that is true. That actor who plays our new transporter chief is non-binary.
They are non-binary, and even Pelia referred to revealing herself as an alien as coming out. So it's just use of some of the terminology. We'll see what they're going to do with that. But anyway, yes, I like seeing that, you know, queer characters just show up on this, you know, that's just standard.
And I kind of hope they don't really lean into too much like allegory stuff with Pelia. I was just like, instead of telling allegories, just have like, you know, just have queer characters doing stuff, and then
right. Although it's in an era when it's, you know, it seems like humanity is past their prejudices on that on that front, at least for the most part, or maybe entirely, all but entirely. So you can't quite do like a story about queer oppression in this time. You would have to do it through some metaphor, but I think, well, we'll see what they're going to do with it. I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe that was a little bit of a Pride Month kind of tip of the hat. But maybe they have a.
I don't think writers ever think about like what time of year their episodes are going to air in this day and age. It's just not
probably not.
It's just not how television works.
But yeah, I'm just ready to wait and see what they do with that and Amanda's reveals next episode or whenever. So Fatheree, I also you know, I can appreciate a story about I guess I'd say the fossil fuel industry being going kind of hand in hand with warmongering, even if it was kind of through some fairly cartoonish bad guys in this one.
This episode, it's very safe Star Trek. But it still feels very Star Trek-y. It's like, okay, there is like some relevant messages and stuff in here, but like it wasn't as bold as I would have liked. But I mean, it still had something. There was like a bit of substance in there, and yeah, and war profiteers. I mean, there's a lot of people in boardrooms right now that are like really hoping for you know, a war between the U.S. and Russia, or you know, they really hope that, you know, like there's a war between the U.S. and China over Taiwan or something, to the point to where like
right. I thought about that a little bit, Fatheree, while I was watching this, and I was like, well, I wish they had treated some of that stuff with more gravitas. And then I was like, well, they're also trying to do the done in one episodes, and that sometimes does mean the problem can't be so weighty that you feel, oh, moving on, you know, that feels like a good thing. And so I think they needed it to be a bit of a thing you could thwart some bad guys with. But yeah, I wouldn't mind if they're, you know, do you think, is the broken circle, is that going to recur throughout the season?
We learned in the Ready Room, Ethan Peck told Will Wheaton that there will be more Klingons in season 2. We're not done with them yet, so which I liked hearing that, because I really love Klingons, and I have a lot of fun with them most of the time. So I think there's definitely room for more stuff with the Broken Circle. However, I would be fine if they're just a done-in-one type thing. It's not that original or unique of a premise.
Sure.
There's not. I mean, I can't tell you like anything cool about it was like some of them looked human, some of them looked Klingon, and none of them had guns on that ship when you couldn't shoot Mbenga and Chapel, and they all got beat up.
That's true.
There's nothing really in there that I'm dying to see again. But if you need like a group of if you need like a criminal organization in a future story, and for some reason you don't want to use the Orion Crime Syndicate, then by all means use the Broken Circle again.
Um, I was about to say something and then I suddenly forgot what it was. Yes. Yeah. We'll have to see what they end up doing with them. What else we got, Father?
I liked the Klingon Greynax that Lon had to go like do the deal with when she was, I guess, selling the Federation weapons. They were gonna load the ship up with Federation tech to make it look real to the Klingon D7. That their plan is to attack with this Federation ship, make it look like an act of aggression on behalf of the Federation. But he was a cool dude. I like how like he kind of at first he just was real, cocky and dismissive of La'an and was like, "Oh, you're a small little woman like you mean nothing to me." And then when she did, I did again roll my eyes at the thermal detonator thing because we just saw Jack Crusher do that in Picard. It's funny how often this happens. It's, I guess, the price you pay for so much Star Trek being in production.
Randomly, Father, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie version of Miami Vice, but they also do it in that too.
No, I haven't. But
yeah.
I liked Greynax's It was, I guess, the same as like Jabba the Hutt's reaction, like, "Oh, this bounty hunter is my kind of scum" or whatever. But he was impressed. He liked it, and I also liked that Uhura struggled trying to translate the Klingon because, as we know in Star Trek 6, she doesn't know Klingon for whatever reason.
Oh right, I would be absolutely fine with them just overwriting that because I think that's dumb.
Well, you can always say that if she does like at some point get good at Klingon and Strange New Worlds, then you can just assume that when Nomad erased her brain in the Changeling, that's something
in the
she
shuffling
lost then.
and the reshuffle of it afterwards, yeah.
Because they never say like they undo that. And Dr. McCoy is like, "Yeah, we'll just have to teach her how to read and everything all over again." But and then like the next week she was fine. So she was a fast learner.
Yeah.
That would completely change your life if you're like, "Yeah, I don't remember my childhood or my family or anything." But yeah, they just brushed right past that in TOS.
I think sometimes I want my Klingons, their ferocity, to come through a little bit more, and not for them to exist to show that somebody else is cleverer. So like we had a Klingon who got outdrunk by Leon, outwitted in this sequence, outfought on their ship, out negotiated by Spock at the end. I think that I might need to see some Klingons show their quality. Why they're badasses.
They almost destroyed the Federation in season 1 of Discovery, so I guess they.
I need to see a personal story. I can't have it be an abstract wartime background.
Okay.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Wartime reminds me, Father. I was just going to say, wartime Trek, I mean, obviously they used it as well as you possibly can in DS9, but by and large, I don't usually want Trek that's like extended wartime period. I didn't really like it in Discovery Season 1, even though they got some good stories out of it. And so, yeah, I don't want them to be either persistently at war with the Gorns or worried about war with the Gorn. I want the show to be doing other things.
I mean, I think for the entire lifespan of Strange New Worlds, just where it fits in the Star Trek timeline, they're going to have to be constantly worried about, starting wars because it's a high tension time between, relationships between Federation and the Klingon Empire, relationships between the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire. I guess they kind of got into that in Equality of Mercy, but
yeah, I don't mind if it's in the backdrop. I just don't want too many episodes that are about, I hope we don't start a war this week. I hope we don't start a war this week.
It'll be like the original series, or like sometimes it'll remind you, like, oh yeah, we're kind of in a cold war with the Klingons. Like we have to be careful. We don't. I like those stories actually quite a bit about like the danger of war and the importance of avoiding it. And right,
the practical truth is that peacetime is always, in some ways, someone is always building up for war, planning on it, looking to instigate a coup, an invasion, or something, expand their territories. So arguably, all peace is just wartime preparation. That's a grim thought, but kind of is. And so yeah, I do agree that it can work as a backdrop.
Well, Mbenga and Chapel, they're captured by the Broken Circle. They're forced to work on, I guess, patch up some injured soldiers or workers, people trying to get the ship ready for their big attack. But we get some. I liked the dialogue. I don't know about you, but like between Mbenga and this Klingon he's
I
treating
did like
about.
it.
I got to give a lot of it to Babs's performance. But when he's treating the Klingon and talking about like, oh, is that the moon of Jagal? And he's like, oh, now I know you're lying. You should be dead if you were there. And then Mbenga's saying, did you know that after the Battle of Chakana, there was so much blood in the air that the rain turned red? Like, I don't know why I like it. I guess Slayer made a song about that, but
That's some pretty
sounded cool.
You know what? That had to be a good, fun line to deliver. Very lofty and dramatic stuff. A lot of Shakespearean dialogue. It's very intense like that, and it's. I hope the actor had a good time with it. It always seems
the
cool.
Klingon seemed kind of like intimidated by it, but you'd think like he'd be into it. He'd be like, "Wow, that sounds really awesome."
He would have said the rain was a baptism. That would have been kind of cool. Again, I kind of want I want a few reminders. This is not a big complaint. It's just something I'd like to see. Reminders that Klingons are also badasses and cool, and their culture is fun to engage with sometimes. Not just threatening and.
Don't we
stuff.
get that though at the end of this episode with like Spock drinking blood wine?
I think so. I think we got some of that, but it seemed like a little bit of the time, a fair amount of the time, it seems like they were all what is it? What's the term?
All hat, no cattle.
All hat, no cattle. That's exactly right.
Here in Texas, what Ann Richards said about George W. Bush.
Yep, boy, was that true.
Well, because he was a Yankee born in Maine, but
right.
But
anyway,
no real Texan.
We are getting
his dad ate a tamale with the husk still on it. Like, what the hell?
Oh God, I forgot that.
How can you forget that? That was terrible. That was like a global embarrassment.
Clearly tried to put that out of my mind. Not since Trump quoted the Bible.
But yeah, let's talk about the stupid shit in this episode.
Right. Jill asks, did anyone like the fight scene? I hear little praise for it. That is where I was. I disliked multiple things. I disliked that apparently Mbenga just keeps around like a super roid drug in case they need to...
Captain America super soldier serum. I just keep with me in my back pocket at all times, even though it's never been mentioned one time previously. But
right, and arguably there's probably other times when it probably would have been handy to have, but... for me at least, the fights, which were very slow motiony, which I'm not real big on that, except occasionally, were not great. They were a little murky. I have to sort of see some follow through on this one, but I certainly hope it's not a recurring thing with them. I almost wanted them to show like some consequences, show them like, oh, this stresses out your system really badly. We're going to spend the whole next week in recovery. Our nerves are going to be frayed, something like that. I kind of wanted that.
I really didn't like the super soldier serum. I thought that was just like so weird. And I'm kind of split. I don't know if I want it to just be ignored and dismissed and never come up again, or are they actually like building to something with that? And is there going to be a consequence to it in a future episode? Like, I guess maybe if it had like a payoff or maybe like made more sense when it's all said and done, I guess that would be ideal for me. But I don't know if it's going to be more stupid stuff, then I'd probably be better off if we just ignored it. But I don't know. I mean, all the episodes are written and shot and waiting to be released.
It's out of our hands, out of everybody's hands. Jill guessed earlier that this was kind of done to, I think it was Jill, to showcase I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher his name. Is it Mab? Who plays Mbenga?
Just say Babs.
Babs, that's right.
We'll be a stereotypical white people that can't learn exotic names.
Alosan Moken, is that it? Something like that. Anyway, Babs, what was he? He's a black belt in like
Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and
just
then
maybe black belt. I think he's won championships.
Yeah, he's for real. He's the real deal.
There's a reason why they cast him as Jameis in Dune Part 1, so that he would have to knife fight the main star of the movie in the climax.
But you know what's weird is that I felt like I would have maybe that would have been cool to see, but I felt like I was seeing him do, kind of Hollywood fighting in this one, or at least the way it was filmed felt Hollywood.
I'm
But
fine with an actiony martial arts doctor. I think that's a cool idea and would make Mbenga feel like unique among the different Star Trek doctors. But yeah, I didn't like the way it was presented in this episode. I think they can do a lot of cool stuff with it going forward.
well, I think O'Brien is an example of how you can take a guy who didn't have a lot of backstory and you can work something like that in. And like it was really not until Deep Space Nine that we're like, oh, O'Brien's a badass. And so yeah, it's fair in these kind of shows to I think allow sometimes some slightly big jumps as moments of character growth. But if you had said, what's on your list of things you'd like to see? More badass combat from Nurse Chapel and Dr. Minga. Not on my list at all. I don't think it was on too many lists.
Yeah, I don't want like the super soldiers. If they just like didn't do the super soldier serum and like they just tuned this way down to where like they only beat up like 3 or 4 Klingons or something, and there's
Right.
like some reasonable explanation like how they got the jump on them, I would be fine with that. But it's like, no, we got to like pad out the episode with some action adventure fluff. Let's have them shoot up super juice there's just so much dumb shit back to back to back, like the cliche shot of like the close-ups on the eyes, the pupils dilating, and then even though they just like injected this green juice when they drop their hypo sprays, like the glass part shatters and there's green liquid. Like why is there like I just saw that stuff go into your neck. Why is it all over the floor now? This is like a weird, visual continuity thing that makes no sense. And then, like, I don't like to say hate very often when I'm talking about these episodes, but I hate when you have the star of the show, the hero of the show, use torture like this in Star Trek. Like we shouldn't do that.
Jack Bauer in 24, circa the year 2001, 2002, or Batman in
Speaking
the Nolan...
of George Bush.
Yeah, right. It's a very George Bush episode.
I hate that. I hate like... Yeah,
it's not what
Batman doing stuff like that too.
Where's the bomb? We don't want our guys we don't tune into Star Trek to watch people torture information out of somebody or use intimidation.
I mean, it's kind of okay, I guess, in this instance because you could say like Mbenga is like under the influence of like the drug. We're speaking of Batman. I think he's shot up with like venom from. If you read Batman comics, you know about. Or I guess it was in like the Matt Reeves movie too when he shoots up.
This was this was the cliche of all post 9/11 kind of like, oh, we need to sometimes if and time could be crucial. Time was crucial. They did the thing and it worked out. If they're going to do it, then I need to see some psychological fallout. I need to see him talking to Chapel in a next episode or two saying, hey, I can't believe I did that, and I'm embarrassed, that I did it in front of you.
Just don't do it.
You just want him to move on?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't...
if they're... I'm torn. I'd either like them to... I would accept just move on. Would also accept there's consequences for it, and he's like, we need to stop doing that. Let's quit that.
And then the camera spinning around when they open up that hatch and jump down to the deck below, like that was dumb. It made me think like, oh, is like there's something weird with like the gravity plating? Is there something like in motion here? It's like it's confusing the first time you watch it. Like, oh no, the camera just spun for no reason. Like it made like the very simple action of them like, let's open up the floor and jump down here and go to this next deck. It's a very clear thing to show that visually. 2 actors on like one set, they look down a hole, they jump down it, and then you have them like land on a different set. It's a very, very easy thing to coordinate and shoot and convey to an audience. But they're like, no, let's just like turn the camera around and confuse people. So
right.
That was annoying.
It's they gave something a visual flourish and style that it didn't need, and I know that's kind of like,
if you think the sequence is boring, then it's because it's going on too long and you need to trim it down.
Right. I agree.
This is like how you edit. Like it's not that hard.
And I do think they actually could have shaved a few minutes off of it. I thought it was a little draggy in the end. So yeah, I would have just tightened that
Yeah,
up.
they didn't need this fluffy stuff to pad out the episode. So I would have preferred a sleeker, quicker, faster runtime. But
I did kind of like this situation that they find themselves in. It reminded me, we've seen variants of this, although I don't really like. This isn't a strike against it, but the Abyss is the one I think most often of when people are in a no-win situation and they have to risk dying by going out into space or something. But we've seen it in Guardians of the Galaxy. Not a big deal. That one is kind of generic, but I thought it was well handled, and I really liked their exchange where he kind of generically says, "We've been in tougher situations than this," and she's like,
"Oh yeah."
And what is she? She's like, "No, I don't."
No,
I don't
we
think
haven't.
have. Yeah.
Like that's yeah, we're
Right,
jumping ahead. We're
sorry. Yeah, if you got other stuff, let's go ahead.
yeah, well, I mean, like, there's the ship on ship action, which as much as I didn't like the beat up the Klingon action, Dave makes fun of me for calling it ship on ship action. But yeah, when I see ships fighting and stuff, the D7, I was happy to see. It had such presence when it like warps. I like that Discovery style, like that immediate warp, where like you arrive like right next to the planet. I know like that's not like the traditional style in Star Trek. Normally, like you kind of coast up to the planet at impulse speed. But I don't know. I like just like that. That's how you make an entrance. It's like that sudden arrival. It's like bam, you're right there.
That's cool.
You're in it.
Did the other Star franchise pioneer that in as far back as at least Jedi, if Return of the Jedi, maybe earlier?
When did it happen in Return of the Jedi?
I think when the like the was it when the Star Destroyers came in at the end?
That's Rogue One.
No, I feel like I saw it somewhere pioneered in one of those original trilogy movies. I'll look into it. I'm not.
We've had this conversation before about like the TIE fighters that show up when Lando is like, why would the shield be up unless they know that we're coming? And then he's like, oh, and then Admiral Akbar is like, it's a trap. And then there's like all those TIE fighters that show up. And like you said, you used to think that they were coming in from hyperspace. You didn't realize that they were the Star Destroyers just like, I guess, dropped them off there. But like, shot like a lot of them like coming towards the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, I'm not saying I have a perfect memory on it, Father, but I felt like it might actually be more of a Star Wars thing. But I'll test it out and see.
I think you're thinking of the Star Destroyer that shows up in Rogue One.
It could be, man. I swear I thought they were doing it well before Rogue One. Maybe it was in the prequels or something. I don't know.
Maybe it was in Discovery Season 1, which
I think it was in the Star Wars prequels. But does it look cool? Yes, I can agree with you on that general thought. And I also like to see, I like when D7s see them turn and bank and do all their maneuvering. They added a little bit of visual flourish where their nacelles go into like, I don't know, fighter mode or something like that.
We see like the disruptors power up on the nacelles.
Yeah.
And I loved when the crossfield class or the fake crossfield or whatever we're calling it, but like when it rised up out of the ground and. I guess it is like a little cheesy and like action movie when you're like holy shit and like it cuts off before she. It's like you can say shit on this show, like you didn't need to do that.
That's true.
Like,
it's okay. Like if you're having a bit of fun and the show, like I said,
it was a fun moment.
They weren't taking it too seriously. I do hope that for their evil start a war plan that nobody, I don't know, filmed it on their cell phone or anything. It's like, oh, that ship didn't actually come from outside of the quadrant. It just came up through the planet's surface. But that's okay. It's not a big deal.
And because it is a crossfield class, or at least like the saucer of a crossfield class, they're using the Discovery sets, like they use the Discovery sickbay, the Discovery corridors, all the stuff like Mbenga and Chapel. Because it's all shot in Toronto, so they're like, oh yeah, we'll just go across the street to the Discovery set to shoot the Mbenga and Chapel stuff. But I like that. It felt like it was all connected in the same universe. And I really like the look of this ship. So like in my mind, it's like, okay, this is what a normal crossfield class ship looks like. And there were a lot of these in the time of Discovery seasons 1 and 2. And yeah, the Glenn and the Disco had like that weird triangular secondary hull. Speaking of Star Destroyers. Now I don't know if I need to leave in all the other Star franchise talk for the podcast or cut it out because then like that joke won't make sense. I'm like I'm doing my Sunday editing now.
You're editing in your head?
Yeah, I'm making mental edits.
Fatheree, I liked in the comments, Joel mentioned, he's like, the Klingons must love that Johnny Cash song, One Piece at a Time.
Is that how they built this thing? Is that how this thing was built?
The Kit Bash, yeah. It's a great song. If you haven't heard it, people, check it out.
Yeah, it took them a year to build this, I guess. They've probably been working on it ever since the armistice or treaty or whatever was signed. Mm-hmm. I got the treaty. They mentioned treaty a couple times. But and here the camera spinning makes sense. It's like, oh, the ship is actually spinning. So spinning the camera actually means something. It conveys something, so.
Right.
I dug that. And then, yeah, the Chapel and Benga stuff. Did this feel like romantic to you, or did it feel like because I think it's supposed to come off like the way the characters are written is like they're like very close friends, and it's like a very platonic thing. But when you have like these conventionally beautiful people, putting their arms together like this emotional moment, I guess
and the camera gets in close. It always feels intimate. We have been trained, and it's been coded into theater, like the visual language of cinema, for decades and decades and decades, maybe a century or so at this point, that when two pretty people's faces are close, that they are in love. Did they show this in the trailer, Fatheree, briefly?
There were the shot of them like going out into space was in the trailer.
Okay.
I don't know what other shots were.
I do think that they are probably just doing the Friends thing. I think that they. I think the show.
I'm convinced without a doubt that the show doesn't want there to be like a romantic vibe between. I saw like some people were reading it that way online.
Yeah. I think in a way they, you could argue that the show is actually kind of being a little subversive and saying, hey, you can have people who are intimate, can get physically close as if they were romantic, but it is just an intimate friendship, or like a close friendship. Hey, Sam and Frodo, Thelma and Louise, pick your poison.
Data and Geordi. Joanne Robertson, our live audience, is saying intimacy can exist without romance. And I think that was the intent and how
I stumbled over the word intimate a minute ago and was like almost trying to course correct in mid-sentence because I was like, oh, does intimacy always imply sex? We've used that sometimes as a code word for it. Let's get intimate. But I do think, as a general word, all it implies is sort of a depth of feeling. It doesn't necessarily have to imply like physical relationship at all.
Like I mentioned earlier, this was like a big emotional moment for me. And then, like that exchange that you were talking about, we've gotten out of worse. And then no, not really. Like when Mbenga said we've gotten out of worse, I was thinking like, wow, what could be worse than like you're about to like jump off into space and hope the Enterprise spots you in time before you die. Like that's pretty damn bad. So I liked when Chapel reacted with like, no, not really. But they're only in space for 43 seconds. So I think it's easy to survive. I mean, no one actually knows. We've never actually put a human body out in space, but I think most scientists agree, like, you would probably live for 43 seconds. I timed it, so it's actually weird that they had like ice on them because like you wouldn't have like ice grow on you like that. A little
bit of visual storytelling. I guess you could argue that, Fatheree, they were sweating and running around in there. They had condensation around their own bodies.
It would evaporate, though. As soon as you got into space, it would boil because there's no air pressure. So it's like a little bit of heat, and the water molecules will expand. They'll expand and turn into steam and leave
If I'm not mistaken, also space can actually vary quite a bit in temperature depending on, are you in the midst of,
the sunlight
is there a solar body nearby and all that? But we don't have to worry about sort of that level of stuff in this. I think it's mainly the ice is like a visual image to like, oh yeah, space, cold, dangerous, got it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't lose body temperature very quickly because there'd be there's no air for the temperature to radiate off into. So it takes a long time to cool down in space. But
it's like you can't if you put a bowl of chili in the freezer, it's not going to instantly turn to ice.
But all those little nitpicks aside, I loved the climax of the episode. I really liked the ship visuals and the tension with the Klingons and the Klingon captain, and then Spock having to make the tough call. And he does do it. He does, pull the trigger on Chapel. And the closing his eyes afterwards and stuff like that, or his
the scene afterwards when he goes to check on her, which we'll probably talk about in a minute. I thought Ethan Peck was really doing some good work there.
Yeah, he doesn't just go to check on her. He like saves her life by like doing CPR.
I mean visiting her in the hospital
Oh,
afterwards.
yeah.
That's why I didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
My favorite line of the episode was probably when Chapel said, "Why you got to be so rough."
Was that a reference to anything? It sounded like a kind of a noir line. I liked it.
To her being a brat, wanting Spock to be her dom daddy. If
I mean, certainly it has felt like that in the past season. Yes. Yeah. No, I think you're right. It did remind me of old noir double entendre. You know how to whistle, don't you?
We've seen James Bond movies.
Yeah, but also like what was it, Into Have and Have Not or something like that? You know how to whistle, just put your lips together and blow and stuff like that.
There used to be, I guess, a more tasteful way. I guess Bond ruined it. Ian Fleming was like,
Bond was like, I'm going to say exactly where I'm going to insert something as a double entendre.
But yeah, let's talk about like our ending. We have this cool Klingon captain, D'Chok, who I hope he can become a recurring character. Maybe he can
look at that facial hair.
He has a cool looking beard, cool looking hair. They're just like the way that their armor looks. They took the Discovery Klingon armor and they painted it TOS colors and gave them like the traditional Klingon prosthetics. I agree with all those decisions. I think that was the right call. I love that. Disco armor, TOS colors. I mean, like it makes sense. It fits.
It's a good look
for what this show is trying to do. And then I forgot to include it in the Gorn eggs, but the blood wine mugs that they're drinking. That's like their traditional Klingon blood wine mugs that we saw on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, nice.
But also other places.
Yeah, I like Spock getting drunk with the Klingons. That's some good time classic Klingon fun. And I like that the Klingons don't always have to be the heavies. That sometimes if you kind of show them that you can match them or whatever, then they're like ha ha ha.
I do believe that like if Spock hadn't have done this, if Spock hadn't have like entertained this guy D'Chok, that it easily would have led to war. So it was good diplomacy on his, because you got to keep in mind coming off of Discovery seasons 1 and 2, like these guys are pretty brutal. They don't need much to go to war, and I got where he was coming from, where he's like, I don't trust the Federation. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't care what legends say. Vulcans don't tell lies or whatever. Like, I know a man to tell me the truth when I share a glass of blood wine with him and I can look him in the eyes and know what's in his heart. And then Spock was able to deliver on that. It's also Spock showing signs of, I guess, diplomacy, which, eventually he will... Not only does he go on to eventually become captain of the Enterprise in Star Trek II, but then in Star Trek VI, he's the guy who does open up the peace talks to the Klingons, to Gorkon, and not only is he responsible for ending hostilities with the Klingons and then getting the Khitomer Accords signed and all of that, but then he goes on later in life to work with the Romulans. And he doesn't live to see it, but eventually reignite the Romulan and Vulcan people. So honestly, like, as much as we think of Spock as like the science officer and the Starfleet dude, I guess
his dad as
yes, it's like he's like one of the best ambassadors and best diplomats who ever lived, when it's all said and done. And like he doesn't even stop with the Romulans. Then, he goes into the Kelvin timeline after Vulcan is destroyed by Nero, but he helps the heroes put a stop to Nero, and then his last things he does before he dies is he helps the Vulcans settle on New Vulcan, on their new colony world. So.
And Fatheree, let's not forget the time he fired the Klingon disruptors to blow up God.
yes. He also murdered God to save his BFF James T. Kirk.
That was a Vulcan hello, a true Vulcan hello in that one.
Yes. Great. What did you do for your friend? Oh, I was house sitting for him when he took his family on vacation. What did you do for your friend? Oh, I saw that God was trying to murder him, so I killed God. I killed the creator of the universe for my friend.
Oh, well, Spock's a good bro. He's a ride or die. right there.
Well, speaking of his friendships, he does do a little bit of bonding with his mom's friend, Palia. With they talk about how boring it is to live for so long, and I like that. Yes, like obviously, yeah, it sucks when you live a long time and see your loved ones die, but everyone goes through that. The unique thing about being immortal that's extra shitty is you get really bored after a while. So let me come be on your ship.
It's funny. I'm a person who doesn't particularly get bored, so that seems more alien to me than anything else. Not that it's not that I don't understand the concept, but it rarely happens for me.
Dave, I've seen you get bored.
I've usually got some stimuli that I can access.
When we're done with the stream, like I'll be able to talk to Dave for like 10, 15 minutes, maybe, if he's not in a hurry. But then he'll get bored and be like, okay, I gotta go, bye.
No, that's because I've told you I'm an antsy person.
Yeah,
and
he can't
have
sit
to,
down. It's hard for him to sit down for an hour and a half to do these.
2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours is a lot, and then I'm like, I gotta go do something.
You need a mobile setup where you can just like pace around while like we're conversing, but like you're on the move.
I don't have a Bluetooth like that.
You need a mobile emitter like the Voyager Doctor.
Oh. But yeah, I like this. I like that scene with him. We found out a little bit more about her people.
22nd century they were discovered, but until then they were living on Earth in secret, kind of like what we saw Guinan do as an Elorian. She's hanging out with Mark Twain. She had a bar in Los Angeles in the 21st century. We also know that at some point in the show, Kirk and Lon are going to go back in time to modern day Toronto. I don't know if it's actually going to be Toronto. That's where they shot it. So I think that they might bump into her, like living on Earth.
Couldn't she have also conceivably have run into Guinan? I know you don't want to get too small world, but like if there's some kind of notable Earth kind of...
Well, Guinan knew about other aliens on Earth, because like she knew about like the Watchers. She knew about like Gary Seven's organization. And so, yeah, I think kind of like in Men in Black, like there's aliens living secretly on Earth, but like they're aware of one another, It might be a bit of that. I don't need it to... It would be weird if there was like a bunch of that on Earth. But Star Trek has shown there's a little bit of that going on. So
I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the actress who in Picard played younger Guinan interact. Have some story in which she and Carol Kane get to have some adventures.
Well, I don't want to get too much into the time travel episode, because that's in 2 weeks based on the episode title. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is the name of the episode, I believe. But we
that's
also...
That's a Shakespeare quote.
Okay. Well, we'll have a Gorn egg for that then when we get to it. But
I think
my theory is that they're actually going to come back in time to the eugenics wars, and we're going to see the eugenics wars, because Lon and Kirk both have ties to a very certain eugenics wars figure with Khan, and that also makes me think. Remember how Picard season 2 ended with Dr. Soong pulling out that file that said Khan 1996.
Oh, right.
Like that happened in 2024. So that episode was written by Akiva Goldsman. So what if that was like a setup for something in the season of Strange New Worlds? I think it's possible we see Brent Spiner as Soong and Khan, and when they come back in time, and Palia, like all during the eugenics wars or something.
For a minute, I thought you were saying you were going to see Brent Spiner playing all those people as Soong and Khan and Palia.
No, he would only be Soong.
I gotcha.
But he did at one point when Strange New Worlds, it was either announced, or it might have been like when the first episode premiered or something. But at one point he did get on Twitter and he said, "See you soon." So I think it's possible. But yeah, back at Starbase, or I guess back on the ship. I don't know if they go back to Starbase 1, but April chews out Spock, and I like that Spock was hungover, getting yelled at by his boss. And you see like the coffee on his desk, and he's like, "Admiral, could you please lower the sound of your voice?" I don't get like with hangovers. I don't get like that like annoyance with like loud noises. But I guess that's
that's kind of also just a headache thing too. But I kind of appreciated that Spock was pushing back a little against him. He's like, "Hey, I did what I thought was best. You can do what you think you need to do to fire me or whatever." I think Spock kind of knew he wasn't going to get fired.
Yeah, he's like, I know I'm a badass at my job. April's even like, yeah, we need all the good people that we can hold on to for what's coming with the Gorn.
He kind of in something of the same way, like when Sisko dressed down Worf for going back for Jadzia in that one episode, but then said, "Yeah, I'd have done the same."
Yeah, like off the record, I would have done it for Jennifer too.
Yeah, he didn't. He wasn't. Spock's not quite enough of a close enough to him that he's gonna give Spock that. But he did defend.
He's like a lieutenant. He's
right. But he defended Spock. He defended Spock to the other admirals, so
who may or may not be Nagora. He's Schrodinger's Nagora.
Yep.
The scene you were talking about of Spock checking in on the unconscious Chapel in sickbay. I liked the line they gave him there. Like,
yeah, it's a great line.
What was it exactly?
I don't have the words for what I'm feeling, or something like that. And I was like, oh, I think we know what the words are, but I like that. That's good, good stuff. I think Mbenga just says yes to that, which I thought was cool too.
Yeah, Mbenga's cool and like supportive, and almost like a caregiver with a patient with Spock in that scene where he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna push. I'm not gonna I know this is hard for you too. So I'm just.
I actually liked in the very early on in the episode when he had like Spock hooked up to the heart monitor and he was chill from the harp, but then Chapel came in and his like pulse spiked, and Mbenga mentions it, starts to say it to Chapel afterwards, and she cuts him off and she's like, "Give me a break" or whatever, and he's like, "I know."
And Mbenga knows. He knows what's going. Like he sees it. He's the audience's surrogate with this storyline.
But I kind of like he's not being like a judgy guy about it. No. He's not being a jerk. He's just kind of like, almost like I get this sense he might be kind of like, if anything, hey, be a little careful, It could be precarious what y'all are doing. So.
And I love sad emo boy Spock sitting alone in his quarters. It's like that shot of him just sitting there alone, where he's kind of tiny. It conveys his isolation and loneliness, and him playing the lute. I just I really dig that. I love that so much.
I agree. Was that the final? No, that's right. We got the sort of final sting with the admirals. Yeah, I kind of wish it would have just been. I wish that in a way that would have been the final scene. Spock.
Well, yeah, I do too, because I don't like that they're worried about an imminent Gorn attack and a war on the horizon with the Gorn.
It could have been like this really like meditative and melancholy ending, and instead it kind of reminded us, oh yeah, here's the thing that some of y'all didn't like in season 1. And including me.
They haven't started shooting season 3 yet because of the writers' strike. So if enough of us ask for a course correction with the Gorn, maybe we'll get it in season 3.
Maybe so. I don't know. I'm always torn on that. I'm like, don't listen to me. But then, when they've course corrected on some of, say, Discovery's Klingons and things like that, I've been like, you guys made the right choice, absolutely. And it always kind of comes down to, are you doing something, is whatever change you made or whatever direction you're going, was it helping the franchise or not? Was it a good storytelling thing or not? I don't think the Klingons from Discovery were a particularly good addition to, the Klingon lore of it all.
We got a course correction on that. So maybe in 3 or 4 years we'll get rubber suit Gorns again.
That's not what I want. I just need something that's not the AVP. Aliens versus Predator.
I encourage people to check out TrekMovie.com's interview with Akiva Goldsman, where he kind of talks about his approach to the Gorn. And he basically said he wanted to use the Gorn because they're iconic from the original series, and he wanted to have a race or a being or some type of bad guy in Strange New Worlds in Star Trek. Like, what if there was something out there that just was truly evil, that you couldn't reach, that you couldn't reason with, that you couldn't have any type of peaceful negotiation with? Like, what if there was something that just like refused everything that Starfleet would typically approach with or lead with? And he chose to make that the Gorn because the Gorn are like iconic and cool and a TOS thing that a lot of people know about. So I disagree with that choice because I think it undercuts the the story of Arena, but that's where he's coming from. So I can understand his approach, even though if it's not what I wanted.
If you're gonna do that, then you do need to, the little lore we know of the Gorn shouldn't just be thrown under the bus, and and I think like if you're Star Trek, then you're gonna need to get into why are why are they as dangerous as they are? If they can't be negotiated with, tell us why. Are they resource poor? Do their brains develop in such a way that they are, ferocity and is just like second nature to them, and they couldn't conceive of empathy? Like going. I don't mind if theoretically, I don't mind if you do it, as long as you can kind of tell me how it is and not just say, as sometimes there's just evil in the world which must be destroyed by good Christians or something.
Yeah. So we'll see what they do. The episode titles are like on Wikipedia and Memory Alpha and everything, so I think that's safe for us to just talk about the episode titles. But the final episode of the season is called Hegemony, so it's obviously going to be about like the Gorn hegemony.
Right. Yep. My fingers are crossed for them. I want them to, I want something that makes me happy. I don't, people who liked the kind of ferocious Gorn of the previous season, I don't think they need to throw out everything in there. I think you can find a way to make these work. But I really hope Goldsman and the others are working on, in some ways adding some depth, maybe working to bridge the gap a little bit between the Gorn we saw and the Gorn of Arena. I admit if it could go out on a bad note with me if they don't get it right.
And I love Strange New Worlds. I liked everything in season 1 except for how the Gorn were handled. And one of the 2 Gorn episodes, I didn't even have problems with Memento Mori. Or like the stuff I did have issues with. I found ways to make peace. Wesley's Kirk. So I don't know if we're gonna if I'm gonna come away from season 2 liking either Strange New Worlds as Kirk or Strange New Worlds as Gorn more. I would like to like both of them more, but if I still don't like either one of those things, I expect I'm still likely to enjoy season 2 because it is episodic and there's going to be plenty of episodes that have nothing to do with the Gorn, that have nothing to do with Lieutenant Kirk, that I can enjoy without having to worry about those things. So I'm not really too concerned about it, other than I guess they are making them the big bad of the show, or at least of these first 2 seasons, and building up to something.
It's a little risky given that they one thing they really kind of can't do too much of is showing Gorn meeting the Federation.
Yeah, if they go to war with the Gorn, like every ship in the fleet is gonna know all about the Gorn, and it's gonna make Arena like really weird, where the Gorn is supposed to be kind of like a new mysterious thing. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to square all that away. So we'll see what they do, and eventually, years from now, we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, remember that time when we were all like worried about like how were the Gorn gonna fit into canon, and luckily we came up with like this good way to headcanon it, and I don't know. We'll see. I mean, these are things that like I've grown up worrying about with Star Trek. Like I remember, watching Voyager talk about, the Friendship 1 probe that was launched in the 21st or 22nd century, and being like, oh, is this going to like line up with like what they're doing next year on this new show, Star Trek Enterprise, and stuff like, I mean, like I'm used to having to worry about Star Trek continuity. That's just a big part of my life that I live with. So, this ain't my first rodeo. I'll find a way to live with it. I'm like Cisco, like I can live with it. Or at least that's what I'll tell myself.
Fatheree, to wrap for me at least on a sort of a positive note, I remembered one thing I wanted to just mention, a line I liked from Pelia near the end when Spock is surmising the worst thing about living forever, and he's like, oh, the loss of the ones you love or whatever, and she says, she's like, no, and I wrote it down, that's a pain shared by all those who live with even half open hearts. I like that acknowledgement that you can live for a short span and experience quite a bit of sadness and tragedy and loss of loved ones. Arguably a short span might make that even more poignant. and so I really liked that line. I thought the writers were hitting on all cylinders in that with that one. So anyway, that was a neat little bit I liked at the end.
I feel like that came very close to a line I use all the time on the show, but also in my personal life. But
Hmm.
I really believe it. I often say that the worst part of the human experience is the death of a loved one. That's the absolute worst thing that can happen to anyone. I guess like if you didn't love anyone, then I don't know what would be the worst thing that could happen to you. But if you do, like she says, if you have even a half open heart, then yeah, that's it
Right.
really sucks.
I thought that was a kind of a nice poetic way to put it. Now that said, there's been some times when I can't defeat a level boss in a video game, and it feels pretty bad.
Um, but yeah, I guess that's it for this episode. We'll go into our Gorn Egg section of the show for people who might be new to Tex-Trek. We like to do this whenever we get a new episode to talk about the Gorn Eggs is what we call our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections that I thought were worth pointing out and sharing with everyone. But there were a few in this episode. Starting off with the operational support services badges that they were wearing at Starbase One. I like that we're getting back to different functions, different jobs in Starfleet having different badges. Kind of that's something we saw like a lot in the original series, where we almost saw it a bit too much. I know that the Geek Filter or Aaron in our live audience loves to talk about like the history of using like the different badges in the original series and how they overused that, giving like every ship a different badge when that wasn't the original intent. But yeah, the operational support services, they have like that little like black, I don't know, trapezoid thing behind it, and then Palia herself, she has like this extra star looking thing. I wasn't sure if that's like from being like a Starfleet instructor, or does that just mean like she's like the boss of operational support services or what? But it also reminds me of the Starbase 11 badge that we saw Mendez in the Menagerie have on
Hmm.
his uniform. So I don't know if that was like inspired by that to be kind of like this the starburst looking thing for, you know, if you're at a starbase. But I don't know. I like that we're doing stuff with different badges. They did that in the animated series too, so I think that's appropriate for 23rd century. Um, Next up, the Vulcan lute that Mbenga gifts Spock. Does he just have like a room of musical instruments in sickbay? By the way, like does he also have like a saxophone and a bass guitar, like all kinds of stuff in
He
there?
could have thrown Spock a Game Boy.
He's like he has like the Guitar Hero guitar.
I don't know if it still works, Spock, but if it does.
Yeah, the Vulcan loot first appeared in Charlie X, but showed up a few times in the original series and then other Star Trek shows. I thought there was some fun casting with Hannah Spear, who played Saru's sister, Sarana, and she also played another Kelpian, Sukal's mom, the hologram that they found in the 31st century. But she played a Klingon. She's the Klingon who, I guess, recruited Mbenga and Chapel against their will to come provide medical services to the Broken Circle. I thought she looked great as a Klingon. She's like a very tall woman, and they knew like she could act well under heavy prosthetics. So you know, it seemed like kind of obvious casting. Like, let's get Saru's sister up in here to be a Klingon.
Sure.
So. The Crossfield class, as I mentioned, it is the same class as the Discovery. It just looks quite different. So what I'm choosing to believe, my headcanon, other people can get on board with this or dismiss it if you don't like it. But I'm just gonna assume like, yeah, this is what like a typical Crossfield class starship would look like. And then they made a big deal in Discovery of saying like, oh yeah, the Glenn and the Discovery, they're the unique ships. They're two of a kind. They're the only ships that are like this with the spore drive. So yeah, I just think that the whole secondary hull, that big triangular secondary hull they slapped onto the Crossfield saucer, that was all just make the spore drive go. But and last but not least, on the star charts in the Admiral's office, we see the planet that the I guess the Gorn attack ship is nearby, where the system is Golden Tear, if I'm saying that right.
That sounded pretty. It sounded
Galvin
pretty good the way you said it, Fatheree.
Okay. But that is from the Deep Space Nine episode Blood Oath. That was one of the planets where Dax and Curzon and Kang and Koloth, where they had chased the albino, their enemy that they were trying to get revenge on. That was one of the places that they had tracked him to, but then he fled because he heard by subspace transmission that they were coming for him. So he was a slippery bastard. It took them decades to track him down and kill him. And you also see Cestus 3 on there, which is where Kirk fought the Gorn in Arena. It's not like in focus here, but that's Cestus right here.
Okay, right on.
But yeah, that was all the Gorn eggs. The ending tribute to Nichelle Nichols, which I thought was really cool. But the text that appeared on screen.
Giraffe last week when we were talking about what we'd like to see, and I know she's speaking of more of like an in-continuity thing, but she wanted to see an acknowledgement, a tribute to Nichelle Nichols after her passing, and this is not on the level of something that might, use her a photo of her or some audio or something like that to show her as
something they slapped on the end of the episode. But I like what they wrote. I like the wording they used. Which I'll just go ahead and read it. But for Nichelle, who was first through the door and showed us the stars, hailing frequency is forever open. I think that she would love being remembered that way. That's what she would be proud of. For being remembered as a first through the door person.
Yeah, very, very lovely writing. I really like that.
And that's it. For me, but y'all heard us talk about this episode. Me and Dave had a lot of opinions, a lot of varied opinions. At the end of the day, my conclusion is that it was a fun, just fine, but really fun episode. Should we do this? Should we do like a new segment at the end of the show where like come up with a 4 to 7 word sentence to sum it up?
I don't.
Do you like that? 4 to 7 words.
I see what you did there. Let me see if I can come up with one later for this episode. I can't off the top of my head.
If you can't do that, then can you tell me what other people are thinking now that they've heard our thoughts? Because we want to hear y'all's opinions, and we were asking people last week. What do you want to see this season in Strange New Worlds? So I think we received some subspace transmissions on that.
Yeah, let's just go through a few of these real quick. Balena says, "I still hope they find Prime Lorca." Is that a thing? Is that on the?
People have been asking for that since Disco season 1, so he's out there somewhere.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. Obviously, man, great actor. It may come down to a matter of can you cast Jason Isaacs, but yeah, I'd love to see it too.
Yeah, I mean, like he worked on Discovery just not that long ago, so.
Geek in Review just wrote, "He's coming," and included a gif of Kirk screaming "Khan." Now, this is something else I don't know a whole lot about. Are we going to get some sort of? This goes to the thing that we're going to see the eugenics wars in the time travel one, right? Is that the thing? Father, did you get that?
No, one of us cut out there.
I think that was me. Okay, so did you hear the thing about Khan?
Yeah. You said.
So what I'm wondering is this referencing the, I guess, fan speculation that the clips that we've seen of Kirk and stuff, the time traveling, is going to go back to a eugenics war era?
Yeah, I mean that's been my theory. So I
wouldn't mind seeing long hair Khan
that's
in
something
his
we've
prime.
Never seen is Khan in his prime. I think that's going to be tricky to cast. Ricardo Montalban is a tough act to follow. He was so good in that random episode of the show that they were like, fuck, we could build an entire major motion picture around this guy.
Yeah, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I'll say so. Those are big shoes to fill, but yeah, if they can pull that off, I think it'd be fun to see Khan in his prime on Earth.
Yeah, what led him to if that was the scene, they were just going in a store, so it wasn't like, oh, you were just like everybody was locked up in, ghettos and things like that. It was like clear that some life was going on in some way.
Well, there's also a shot of them watching a mushroom cloud bomb explosion go off.
Interesting.
So.
I forgot that. But yeah, life under his dictatorship. What did he say? What did he say? He controlled how much? 1/4 of the Earth, 1/4, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway,
rivaled Genghis Khan.
Yeah. Let's see. Dan says, I'd like to see a trip to Andoria or Teller Prime. I know it's a long shot, but we need to know more about these core Federation worlds. And have we ever had an episode on Denobulus? I know, Father, you are specifically an advocate of the Teller Prime.
Yeah, that started a thread with me and Larry Nemechek trying to get the hashtag. What was it? I think time for Teller Prime. Yeah. So let's get that trending.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like the brief glimpses that we've had of Tellarites have not quite lived up to what I think they can be.
Oh, there are some good-looking Tellarites in this episode, though. Like, I mean, the Klingons are all gorgeous, beautiful bastards, but there were some Tellarites running around in the background. And next week, in the courtroom episode we're gonna get next week, there's in some of the pictures and stuff that they've shown, there's a Tellarite judge. And he's the best-looking Tellarite we've seen.
I like the idea of a Tellarite judge. That'd be good.
I don't know if he speaks. He might just be set dressing. But if he actually has dialogue and stuff, that'd be cool.
I kind of hope he's a little bit of a slightly ridiculous, over-the-top Judge Judy type, yelling at people. I know that could be kind of too goofy, but possibility. Let me round it out here. Geek Filter, our own Tex-Trek's own Aaron, says, I'd like to see...
This is a good one.
Yeah, he says, I'd like to see another example of Hodgkin's law of parallel planetary development. Those were fun TOS episodes and could be perfect for a storytelling device tackling issues we have today. And I kind of like this idea, too. Yeah. Trek sometimes gets right up in the current modern-day business and just talks about what we're experiencing, through some planet where it's still going on, is recreated, something like that.
Yeah, I as a kid, I was always annoyed with the parallel Earth thing. So I'd watch Mary and be like, "What? They just randomly found a planet that was like identical to Earth, but slightly different, or what? Like they just found a planet that's like identical to Earth, but the Roman Empire never fell. Like that's so weird." But like the reason why they were doing that is part of like the original concept of Star Trek was like, oh yeah, here's a way where we can save money, visit planets that look very similar to Earth, but also tell interesting science fiction stories. But now, like, because I have such nostalgia for TOS and that stuff, like, yeah, I do want to find another parallel Earth. And I also have like a good headcanon explanation for, the preservers were out there preserving. They were probably like duplicating Earth and stuff like that. So
sure. We found a planet that's identical to the Paramount backlot.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I would be up for it too. Those were some great TOS episodes and fun ones. So yes, bring it on.
And I hope that we get some subspace transmissions on this episode. I'd love to hear what people thought about the Broken Circle, and if we receive anything, either comments on YouTube or I put out a tweet about it that people can reply to. You can tell us in the Tex-Trek Discord server, comment on the Tex-Trek Facebook page, but we'll share some of that stuff next week when we talk about Season 2, Episode 2, Ad Astra per Aspera, which is going to be our courtroom drama. The trial of Una Chen Riley. Well, I think she's going to be proven innocent or not guilty or whatever, and resume duties on the Enterprise. But it's about the journey to getting us there, not so much the destination, right? That's what Harry Kilm said about Voyager, to the journey. So hopefully that's a fun outing. There is a history of really great trial episodes in Star. I was just talking about Measure of a Man was the first great TNG episode. The Drumhead's another good one. My personal favorite trial episode in Star Trek is Rules of Engagement, the LeVar Burton directed, Ron Moore written Klingon trial with Worf on Deep Space Nine.
That was the one that had the Klingon prosecutor I really liked. Yeah, man, that was, and that came out of nowhere. But yeah, I also loved. Yeah, there's some great trials throughout Deep Space Nine, Cardassian trials, and I think at least one other Klingon trial, maybe, with Quark, maybe.
Well, I guess he got he did like some Klingon political stuff in House of Quark and
Maybe
looking
that's
for
what I'm thinking
Carmack in
of.
all the wrong places, but
Yeah. In any case, yeah, they've got that tradition. So the next week has a little something to live up to.
Is Ad Astra per Aspera going to be the first truly great Strange New Worlds episode? I guess we'll find out soon. But I'm excited, and this is going to be a fun season. And if you're new to Tex-Trek, if this season premiere is what brought you here, please hit subscribe. We have some other people that are going to be talking about the episodes on Thursdays, and Dave and I here on Fridays with the deep dive discussion. We normally don't run quite this long, but season premiere, we have a lot of excitement to get out there. But
turns out
it'll be a fun journey, and then after Strange New Worlds, we're gonna have Lower Decks and Prodigy, and then before you know it, it'll be early 2024 with the final season of Discovery. So plenty of Star Trek to talk about in the coming months. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any of it, and if you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, do us a favor and rate wherever you're listening. It really helps people find the show and help us grow our audience. So, and thank you everyone who's been sticking around through the years. It's a lot of fun. Every time we get like a new season, it's like it's so fun to have like so much Star Trek. It's like we get like a big breath of fresh air. We went from Picard season 3 to this. It's just like it's a very different vibe, but it's still just as fun.
Yeah, totally. And then we're going off on this journey with all y'all. So thanks for journeying with us.
And until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.